I often feel like luck is on my side when it comes to finding engines to tear down on this channel. There are certain engines, however, that I just assume I'm never going to find. I have tried to find them, and it seems the harder I try, the further away they get. And then you check out Marketplace because it's been 13 minutes since you looked last, and a blown up Honda S2000 engine shows up for just a few $100. See, I'm lucky. It's just luck. It's not skill. Facebook Marketplace has no skill. It's just luck of the draw. And that is why today we're going to tear down this AP1 first generation S2000. It's an F20C1. This is my favorite Honda engine ever. Mainly because it's rear-wheel drive based and it makes a lot of power per liter. That was the claim to fame with this engine. They're supposed to make 120 horsepower per liter. It's a 2-liter. It makes 240-ish horsepower depending on what part of the world you live in. And that's a lot considering this came out in 2000. This is 25-year-old technology now at this point. It's pretty impressive. One of the things I really enjoy about these engines is that they don't really respond well to aftermarket modifications. Sure, you could put a supercharger on it, or a turbo kit, or nitrous and get more power, but intake, headers, exhaust, that stuff doesn't really do a lot for these engines. And while that may sound like a bad thing to most people, the way I look at it is that they made an engine and left nothing on the table. A lot of manufacturers leave all kinds of things on the table. You hear long tubes will make 30 horsepower, or an intake manifold swap will make 15 or 20 horsepower. That's not the case with these engines because Honda did everything they could to extract the most amount of power out of a 2-liter 4-cylinder. These engines rev extremely high, 8,200, 8,500. I've seen people rev them to 9,000 RPM, which coincidentally has led to the premature death of a lot of them. And that could be what happened here because this engine is a little bit on the religious side. It's holy. Is that too much? Too far? Sorry, guys. It's a pretty interesting spot for an inspection port, but I can see some damage on the crankshaft, and if this port was located anywhere else, you may not see the damage. You guys know the way this works. The first thing we're going to do is pull the plugs. Wow, that's really tight. I'm going to have to use my ratchet, otherwise I'll break my power ratchet. Surprisingly, even though there's a hole in the block, the plugs don't look too bad. There's no bent straps, smashed electrodes. A few of them look pretty carbon fouled, but they're not bad. This is not bad. I got fingers crossed that the cylinder head survived this ordeal. Next, we're going to drain the oil because I'm pretty sure this still has oil in it. And it's not going to make a mess in my shop, right? Oh, there's really not a lot in there. There's nothing stuck to the drain plug. Let it do its thing for a minute. Now I'm going to take a minute and pull the harness off the valve cover, off the VTEC solenoid here. Someone's been in here before. Has an aftermarket VTEC solenoid. Oh, that's not supposed to be there. I don't know what is going on here, but this is whatever this was poorly done. Oh, they just had everything twisted together. All right. Dipstick. It's empty. I guess there's only 2 bolts left holding it on. Well, I've certainly seen cleaner engines, but it's not terrible. Kind of looking for metal deposits, sparkles, forbidden glitter, and I don't really see anything. There's a throttle body bracket that should not go in there. Yeah, I don't really see anything wrong that's obviously apparent. While this engine continues to drain slow as possible, we're going to see if this thing turns over. I don't really know. Oh, yes. Well, that's good. That's really good. That means it should come apart pretty easy. It was really stiff at first. Nope, not going to say it. I don't think it's got any rod knock, but it may not have any rod, so. Valve train all looks pretty good. Excellent. Next, I'm going to take a minute and start to remove some of the accessories, the AC compressor, the alternator. Get this cleaned up a little bit, get it stripped down some. Now, where does this disconnect? Where's the connector? Oh no! Has this been worked on by people? I'm just going to put one bolt in it for now. The way it doesn't go dangling by the harness. Well, unfortunately, I found where the previous owner has modified the engine harness. This is the trigger wire for the AC clutch. The connector's gone on both sides, and they just boop back together. So I'm going to cut one side, probably going to cut the compressor side, and hopefully this is a connector that's on other Hondas and I can repair the harness and the compressor. Hate doing that. The starter out of the way. Now I'm going to take some time and get this engine harness off the engine. Oh, I see. One engine harness. Some repair needed. Let's pull the intake manifold support bracket. Now I'm going to remove the top intake manifold nuts and bolts. Wow, those are excessively tight. Now we'll start on the other side of the intake. Now I have access to pretty much all of the lower intake manifold bolts. We have a couple hoses we need to take care of first. All right, the intake should just boop right off. There's some stuff holding it. Well, intake ports are very clean. A little bit of rust or moisture on the left valve there. There's some leaves in there. I don't think those leaves did any kind of damage. It probably happened when I pulled that intake manifold off. All right, next we're going to remove this rubber hose off the oil cooler. And it looks like that hose is pretty well swollen. A little bit of coolant, not too much. There, that's nice and loose. Next we'll remove the water pump and thermostat housing. And finally, the engine mount bracket. Hey, get out of there, you jerk. I didn't invite you.
Oh.
Well, boop, there's a hole. While we're on the subject, let's remove the other side motor mount bracket. No hidden doors on that side. Or should I say, windows. So the next thing I want to do is pull the VTEC solenoid, sometimes called the spool valve. I believe this will have a gasket in here, which sometimes can collect metal if there's metal in the oiling system. That's actually a really good sign. I expected to find a bunch of bearing material in the screen, but I don't see any. It looks pretty clean. Now we're going to turn this engine over to what I believe is TDC. Now we'll crack the cam caps loose. The cam journals actually look pretty good. I don't think any metal or any debris ran through these. And the valve train also looks pretty good. I don't see any issues. The cam caps all look pretty good except for that journal. That one's got a little bit of damage. The rest of these all look pretty decent. And the camshafts look good. Let's see. A little bit of damage there. It's really not too bad. It's not perfect. A few small grooves. The exhaust cam looks good. Before I remove the valve train, I'm going to use some rubber bands and kind of keep these all together. Zip ties, rubber bands, it all works. It's very similar to a K-series. If I don't do that, and the rockers fall down too far, they don't stay in a line, it can shoot parts out. Don't really want to do that. I've got all these zip tied, so everything should stay together. Now I need to just pop this loose a little bit. And there's not really a good way to do this, doesn't look like. I guess I could use a mallet, but I don't really want to pry on anything, but we're going to. One of the things you can do with the valve train out is look at the height of the valves. If you've got a bent valve, it will be lower. If you've got a broken valve, it could be higher. These don't seem to have anything major wrong with them. This one maybe. But the rest of these look pretty good. Now the timing chain tensioner, I think I can just get these two bolts out here. Maybe not. Oh, maybe. Whoa there. Whoa there. Nope, I could have done that the other way. I don't know what I was thinking. There's the tensioner. Looks pretty good. Now remove this. Oh, that O-ring tore. It's all right. Well, that's down there now. Now we're going to get the bolts that hold this to the timing cover. Time to crack the head bolts loose. come back here. Here we go. I said, here we go. All right, blue. Well, that's not right. Head gasket looks good. That one's bad. Very bad. Well, 3 of these pistons look good. And then there is cylinder 2. Hold on a second. There we go. You can clearly see there's contact with the intake valves, damage to the piston. It also hit the cylinder head. You can see how it's clean. So we're going to have to really check that head out for some damage. The cylinder walls, not so great. Cylinder 3, it's got some vertical scratches, but nothing too terrible. That scratch right there is not too great. Pretty sure I already know the results, but that one's okay. That one's okay. Disconnecting rod. That one feels okay too. So just one. Well, it's clear which cylinder stands out. Yeah, cylinder 2 is the one that let go, and you can see the combustion chamber is clean where the piston struck it. There's also marks on the valves from making contact with the piston, and I would wager that all 4 of these valves need to be replaced. But I'm not going to consider the head junk. I think this head is definitely serviceable. Of course, it would need to be checked at a machine shop, but 4 valves from Honda, and I bet some minor machine work, and this thing's ready to go back on. Next, I'm going to attempt to remove the crank pulley bolt. Now on Hondas, this either works or it doesn't. Let's get the big one. This'll do it, right? And how? Now let's get this timing cover off.
Or not.
Yeah, that was tight. I don't think I have to pull the pan first. No. Let's take a look at this timing guide here. Yeah, that rail looks pretty good. I don't see any major wear. See what this one. This one is also in really good shape. You could totally reuse this. That beautiful chain. Now we're at the stage of the teardown where I need to make a giant mess. I mean, flip the engine over. I'm sure it's not going to make a mess. No, this would never. Oh, there's some loose stuff in there. I don't see any holes in the pan. You know what? Rather than pick all that loose stuff out of the engine, we're just going to pull the pan in the upright position. I think that's it. Is that it? Did I miss something? Oh no! That's not supposed to be there. Well, this is nowhere near the gift basket from last week, but that's a section of rod cap. Got some bearing foil, some more bearing foil, and then some chunkies here. It's hard to really identify what all this stuff is. This could be block, this could be bed plate, could be piston. I bet we're going to find a whole bunch more when we flip this over. Lots and lots of sparkles. I was kind of wondering why this thing drains slow, but there's a bunch of junk blocking the oil from the oil drain. That's probably why. Now, we'll flip this over. What was that? Something fell. Oh no! Oh, that's good. The very first thing I noticed was this giant gaping explosion from whatever tried to make an exit. It clearly succeeded, at least some of it did. Also, there's a hairline crack here. I don't know if we can fix it now. I can see the crank. It's not pretty. Let's go look at the other side. Not quite as bad on this side. This was the side that had the hole a little bit higher up. But there's definitely a bunch of carnage in there. Oil pump pickups do not make good engine part storage devices. This is just absolutely full. In fact, we're just going to leave all this stuff in there. We're going to get the oil pump off, and then we'll pour it out. Wait a minute. That's perfect. The first thing we need to do is try to knock out all this engine contraband from the pickup. Oh, that's sparkly. Oh, wow. It's a lot more spacious than I thought. I think that's the end of the line. Yep. Well, that was a bearing, I think. Yeah, that was some bearing material right there. And since we got the oil pump here, and it looks like it's just held on or held together with a bunch of tens, I suppose the right thing to do, clearly, would be to blast this thing apart. I have no idea if it's worth any money, but I can tell you if it had metal run through it, it isn't. At least I'm not going to sell it. You know what? Let's move the bearing chips over here. And there's the oil pump. We're just going to take all the parts out and forget where they went. It honestly doesn't look like a whole lot of material made it through here. Just a little. There is a little bit of wear on that housing. And that's just enough to do it in. There's the damage on the housing. It's not terrible, but it's also not perfect. Same thing with that gear. And basically anything smaller than that screen in there can make it through here. And, well, there's no tolerance for that kind of stuff. No tolerance whatsoever. I think they call that zero tolerance. Now the best part. Removing the windage tray. Here we go. Oh. Oh. Well, let's drop in big stuff. I don't even know what this is. Nope. 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 Okay, well that's just part of that now. When I pulled the windage tray off, this part fell out of it, which is a piston squirter and part of the block. But when you look a little further, the windage tray still has part of the bed plate bolted to it. And look at the journal on that crank. My God. That is severe damage, as I would call it. And then, ooh, got a rod hanging out here. It's actually sticking through this side. Can't really get it out of there, or can I? No, we're gonna have to pull the bed plate out. Wonder what the rest of this looks like. The next thing I'm going to do is remove all the bolts for the bed plate. I need to remove that first, and then we can try to turn the crank over, get all the rods and pistons out, and all the broken stuff. See how easy it is to get this off. There's virtually nowhere to pry. Nope, we're going to resort to other methods. That seems to work. No, you don't. Hey, come back here, rod. This is the section of rod that was jammed into the bed plate, and it fell out when I pulled that off. These don't make the best hammers, but, you know, in a pinch. This is pretty torn up. Both rod cap bolts sheared off, and this is number 2's rod. This is the number 2 journal. You can see it waged a little war. Nothing like last week, but still not good. You can see there's a lot of damage at the bottom of the bore on the block. And there's the hole in the block. Now it's time to get the other 3 rods and pistons out. We can pull the crank out and take a look at everything. Here's the bed plate. There's a hole on that side. That's not the side that vents to atmosphere. That's not where the inspection port was. There's one of the inspection ports. This is actually cracked down here. And there's actually a few marks near that cylinder and a couple over here. There's definitely stuff flying around in here. The main bearings don't look that bad. I'd like to see what the rest of the rod bearings look like. Put this. Oh no, I need to trim my drift punch. It's nice it has tool holders. Now we can pull the crank, I think. Well, there's the remains of cylinder 2. There's the piston, and hey, part of the rod cap's there. Let's get that knocked out, and we can look at all of the rods and pistons. Ooh. The good rod bearings don't look so great. The bad rod bearings look much worse. And cylinder 3 and 4 also quite rough. The rods and pistons that survived some vertical scratches, the rings don't have hardly any tension at all. They're also really thin. I don't know if that's by design or because of the condition of this engine. Piston number 2, that's bad. You can see that ring land is smashed down. That's from making contact with the cylinder head. Look at the way the surface of that skirt looks. But the rod, the wrist pin's still probably fine, but the rod sheared off. I don't think there's any missing pieces. I think that's just it right there. And this end was a hammer, that end was a hammer, that end was a hammer. I think there's a saying that everything's got a hammer side. Well, that rod, all sides were hammer sides. Cylinder 3, not so bad. And cylinder 4, also not too bad. Some of the stuff can definitely be reused. And the crankshaft kind of mirrors the rod bearings, as you'd expect. As you can see, that it's got some major damage. This crank is done. It's scrap bin bound. There's some marks on the counterbalance, the hammer side of the crank. The rest of it isn't too bad. It's a real shame. These are pretty expensive. You can see the extent of the damage of that bore. This is also scrap. Unless you want to make a table out of this, maybe an end table. I think this was a pretty quick failure on this engine. Had it been one of those slow, drawn-out deaths, we would have seen lots of metal suspended in the oil, signs of that all throughout the top of the engine, but we really didn't see damage to the cams or the cam journals, just a little. And the biggest indicator was the VTEC solenoid screen. The number one sign that a bearing is coming apart is you'll find bearing material in that screen, and it was clean, which tells me this all happened quite quickly. And this was probably one of those moments where someone went, and then I can't finish that statement on YouTube because I wish to stay monetized. Either way, this was an expensive oops. These engines are not cheap, $3,000, $4,000, and they're not that easy to find. They didn't make a lot of these cars. So if you have one of these cars, please just keep it full of oil. I think that's what happens. Probably run hard, run low on oil, and we saw what happened. This was a really good core for me. It has lots of really good parts to sell. It is very well dressed. Not that kind of well dressed. It was intake manifold, wiring harness, all the rolling accessories. It's a really good deal for a few $100. So if you'd like to buy parts off of this engine or any of the other engines I've torn down, or if you want to buy parts off of this 70,000 mile 6-speed manual 335 sedan, I'm going to leave our email in the video description. You can also go to importapart.com and peruse our inventory, and you can check out the recent uploads, parts cars I've put up. If you don't see what you're looking for, you can fill out our part request form, which sends us an email of exactly what it is that you're chasing. I really hope you enjoyed this teardown. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.